Get up to 2 months of free podcasting service with Libsyn. Check out the show notes for your promo code to get started podcasting today.
You have to be around that, that women empowerment, this is what's going on, but now what's next?
What's next?
Right. Like we have to have a game plan, not just going to be around just, talking about our problems and that's it. No, what's the problem? And now what's the solution? What's the game plan? So really normalizing that.
Hello again. I'm Angela Taylor, your host for Unlocking the Club. Thanks for joining us. Today, I actually want to start this episode off by thanking all the moms out there. Honestly, I don't think that we thank our mothers or acknowledge and thank those mothers that we have in our lives frequent enough. And it just came to me, I've been traveling quite a bit over the last couple of weeks and have been in conversation with a lot of mothers who, are just worried about making sure that their kids are safe and healthy, that the flu and everything going around in school. They're worried about their kids' well-being. There was just a CDC report that came out about, just mental health, particularly mental health with young girls. And so you just think about all these mothers that, in addition to them trying to, work or take care of the family or be a caretaker for their parents, they have this extra layer of stress on them to make sure everybody else is okay. And I just don't know if we sit down, pause, and thank our mothers enough. I think about, just some of the things that still to this day are remarkable about my mother, and that I just didn't know how she did it all. I never remembered being in need or wanting anything, and she would make sure we had shoes to play basketball, or that there was food on the table, or that we had a warm breakfast before we went to school in the winter. And I don't know if I thanked her enough for those little things, those everyday things. But as I see and I talk to friends who have kids and teenagers, recognize how much stress that they may be to do those little things. So I just want to start out today's show by having us all pause for a second. If you are a mother, thank you for all that you do to make sure that your children's life and all of those around you are better. And I just want to make sure that all of us, whether we are parents or not, that we also pause to acknowledge those people in our lives who identify as being a mom. Whether that is a birth mom or someone who plays that role on a soccer team or in a household, that we just thank them for the little things, because those little things make a huge difference in the lives of all of us. So I want to start with that, and also very much looking forward to today's conversation on Unlocking the Club as we're joined by Dr. LaToya Wiggins.
Welcome to the Unlocking the Club podcast, where we host honest and direct conversations about journeys of access, personal truth, and reclaiming space. We share our truth so that you can find the key to own your truth, honor your journey, and reclaim your space. Grab your keys, your wallet, your phone, and invite your friends to meet you at the club. Here's your host, Angela Taylor.
Today on Unlocking the Club, I will be joined by Dr. LaToya Wiggins. Dr. Wiggins is the CEO of She Is Nourished, LLC. She is also a wellness coach, a self-care strategist for Christian moms, and a transformational speaker. Dr. Wiggins transitions moms with multiple children from worn out to winning so that these mothers no longer feel depleted, but instead develop the necessary healthy habits to be nourished, renewed, and rejuvenated. Dr. Wiggins received her doctorate of physical therapy from Marymount University and earned her health and life coaching certifications from the Health Coach Institute. She is a wife, mother of 3 sons, physical therapist, and lover of health and wellness. Thanks for tuning in as we unlock the club with Dr. LaToya Wiggins. Dr. Wiggins, welcome to Unlocking the Club. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, Angela, how are you?
I am doing great. I am so excited to be in conversation with you for a variety of reasons, but just because of the work that you're doing and your story and your willingness to share your story in a way to help other mothers. around the country. And so I guess before we get into your story, was there anything that I left out of your bio? I know that we're so much more dynamic than our bios really tell us. So what is missing from that bio that our listeners need to know about you?
What is missing? That's always something I
This is your
feel like,
chance,
right?
right? This is your chance to say this is all about me.
Well, I love that because oftentimes our identity, we kind of zoom in on, so for example, me, I'm automatically thinking I'm a mom, which I am. I'm a mom. I'm a wife. You said I'm a physical therapist. I feel like as my own person, I am a child of God. So that's very big for me. My religion, just working for my Heavenly Father, and everything else pretty much just falls from that. So I feel like that's a very big, important piece of me.
Well, to juggle all those things, being a mom, a physical therapist, a coach, and a child of God, like who have you had to be along the way in order to reconcile all these different hats that you wear and to wear them with so much power?
I would say that piece that I just mentioned, I had to be a child of God first, because when I wasn't focused on that, I struggled in all those other different areas for sure. I mean, every last one, not just, oh, this and that piece. I struggled as a mom. I struggled as a wife. I struggled as a coach. I struggled as a physical therapist. And just really, I know we're going to dive more to that, but going on a healing journey, which for me involved mental health therapy and strengthening my relationship with God, that's what really I felt like strengthened who I was as LaToya outside of all those many different titles.
Well, you mentioned the word struggle,
Mhm.
and I think that we all think it oftentimes that we're struggling,
Mhm.
we're not doing as well in some domain. But what is your definition of struggle and what was that actual context?
Mhm. Yeah, I think struggle, now that you mention it, it really is specific to the individual, because somebody else could think they're struggling in the area and I may not look at that as a struggle. So for me, struggling was feeling like I felt stuck, in which I call like a dark place, like one of those places where just like, I don't want to be here. I'm not happy here. And I don't know how to be happy. I don't know how to have peace and joy. I feel like every few steps forward that I take, I end up further back instead, or sometimes I feel like my feet, they're not moving anywhere. So for me, that was my struggle. And it was dealing really with my mental health, which was anxiety and depression, which I didn't even realize I had. I figured I had depression before I started going to therapy, but I had no clue that I struggle with anxiety.
Well, you said that, I'm not happy. I
Hmm.
don't know how to be happy. And you're not sure what's happening here.
Yeah.
Was that something that you kicked down the road over time before you were ready to address it? Or were you aware in the moment where it started to come on?
I felt like it was one of those things that built up over time, but it was very pronounced. That time when I really felt like I was actually stuck and struggling, that happened after I had my third son, who just turned 2 a few days ago. So
Uh-huh.
again, I have 3 kids. So I struggled a little bit after I had my second son, but I felt like I bounced back faster. And after I had my third son, this was in the middle of the pandemic, February 2021, in the middle of the pandemic, you're already isolated because of the pandemic. Everybody's home. So it's not like I really have a an actual rest break. Everybody's home, children and husband. And I was dealing with the usual, well, I don't want to say usual, but I guess common things that happen, in the postpartum stage. So I was having issues with breastfeeding. I had a C-section, and I had issues with my C-section healing. And so then I'm running back and forth to the doctors for myself. I'm running back and forth to the doctors for my son, with that lactation consultant, to the specialist who helped snip his tongue tie, which helps you with breastfeeding. And that stage was just overwhelmed. And I already dealt with it with my second son. But it was, again, I guess it was just different because I had 3 kids. I think that was really the main issue. I had 3 kids now instead of 2, and that was the difficult transition for me. I didn't I didn't know how to deal with it. I felt like I was being spread thin. I'm trying to, nurture this newborn, but still nurture my middle son who was he had just turned 4 at the time. I had my older kid still doing virtual school. You're trying to make sure all the kids are adjusting well. And that was really the issue. I was so worried about everybody else that I forgot about me. And I was always walking around the house trying to clean up after everybody. I'm still supposed to be healing from a C-section, but I'm cleaning up after everybody and I'm starting to get grumpy. I was getting irritated. I just was not a very nice person. I always say that I was like a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. And, as soon as I would see another mess, especially one day, it was like after I saw just another mess on the floor that I felt the need to clean up. And the key phrase in that is I felt the need to clean that up. Like I didn't have anybody else to help me. And I just lashed out at my family, just everybody saying everybody's getting on my nerves. Like I don't know what the newborn did, but everybody was getting on my nerves. I was so sick and tired of cleaning up after everybody else. Felt like nobody was helping me. But like the way I lashed out, it was just ridiculous. It was like an explosion. Like I said, that time bomb went off. And I felt bad afterwards, of course. It was like the release happened and then I was stuck with that. So I just remember retreating to my room, having my own little private pity party, just crying, letting the tears just fall out. And in that moment, it was like, LaToya, something's got to give. Like, I don't like this person. I don't want to be her. And we've been struggling for way too long. That it started with the postpartum stage and it carried on for several months and it wasn't getting any better. I'm thinking like, okay, things will get better. No, because now I was dealing with something and I just didn't know how to get out of it. And when I finally decided in that moment of my private pity party to see a therapist, that's when it was uncovered through therapy that I was having depression and anxiety. And like I said, I never thought I had anxiety. I figured depression, but I never thought I was an anxious person until it's like, oh, when you really look up the definition of anxiety, it's like, yeah, you're always worrying. That's anxiety, So seeing a therapist. And at the same time, I decided it's time to strengthen my relationship with God. It was like working with both of those things, working on strengthening my relationship with God and seeing a therapist. It really helped me to focus on those things that were important to me to get back to, taking better care of my mind and body. That helped me to have more energy to take care of these busy boys of mine, get back to doing things that actually brought me peace and joy and really just living better, trying to do things so I can be a patient person, a more calm person, have peace even when I feel like I'm in the middle of chaos. So, my interactions with my family are much better. The interactions with my husband is much better. Even outside of my family now, like now we're back out into the world, for the most part with COVID, I feel like my social relationships are better. So everything really trickled down from working on me. I can see the difference in how I interact with other people. And now I can really see I have more peace and joy in my life, more happiness.
Well, I'm someone who I don't have children. And so
Mhm.
I always get curious, kind of the outside looking in at mothers and all of the burdens they
Mhm.
carry. And, as you were telling those stories, there's so many places I want to go, LaToya. One question I have for you is as you were in that moment and things were starting to pile on
Mhm.
and you blew up,
Yeah.
right? Was your concern about what made me blow up or what impact it had on my family?
I would say both. And I would say the scary part was the impact that it's going to have on my family, of course, so I can only fix that by fixing me. So yeah, I would
Yeah.
say that was my most important concern, like I can't keep on going off like this, they,
Yeah.
they don't deserve a mother and a wife like this. And
Sure.
like you said, kids are forgiving, but that type of attitude over and over and over again, that would eventually have a bad effect on them. And, I didn't want that to happen to them. They're like, I don't want to be the reason my children need therapy.
Right, right. But I wonder if like that burden of not being the reason why a human has a human experience
Mhm.
and that sense of having to be perfect and protect everybody else while not actually noticing and acknowledging what may be going on with you. So prioritizing everybody else's safety and wellness in the midst of your own journey, right?
Yes.
And I just wonder, like, how often, and I think about my mother, right? Like in anxiety or that sense of worry, that I oftentimes I would poo-poo some of the things that she would be worrying about because I wasn't worried.
Right. That's
Right?
usually the
She was
issue.
carrying this burden that I wasn't carrying myself, and it had 100% of the things that were in my control and out of her control. And but I also knew that that's something she needed to feel like right, she could carry that and alleviate some of that from me. And perhaps in that process, I didn't feel the same weight because she was carrying the majority of it and would help me figure it out whenever we got there.
Yeah.
But I just wonder about that interrelationship between a mother and everything else, of like how much of the burden is your responsibility and how much of that burden do you multiply unnecessarily.
And that's what I have to check myself on, because right now, like, I'm still not perfect. So a lot of times I do have to check myself because the things that I'm worried about, nobody else is worried about. My husband is not worried about it. And, sometimes that makes me more worried, like, you should be worried about it. So it's really a lot of times just kind of checking yourself, like, why am I getting worried? Why am I feeling anxious about this? Just really a lot of self-talk sometimes will kind of bring it back down. Like, why am I worried about this? Because a lot of times, like you said, it's not something to worry about. Or for example, even just like sometimes just simple things like cleaning up. Something just doesn't have, they don't have to be taken care of immediately. Where sometimes, like you said, that perfectionism, it's like, I need to do this now. And it's like, but why? That's usually the question. Like, why? Why do you feel the need to do this? Who said you have to do this?
Right, right. Well, and there's, I think, a fine line too between, and I'll use the terminology now without knowing the medical piece of it. Like, right, anxiety, right, is real, real. And then there is the worry about being perfect and all those different things. And I would imagine an important piece on this journey is knowing the difference between the two, of knowing, like, if the kitchen counters aren't as clean as they could and should be, that drives me nuts as well. And I'm like, no one else noticed this, but apparently no one else notices. So why should I be worrying about it? If no one else is worrying about it, right? But the difference between the two, of where it can become debilitating to you, right? And that stress can cause trauma and harm to your body.
Yes. Yeah. A lot of times you just really have to think about it. Like, for example, I've heard this term, I forgot the exact way they say it, but a lot of times, for example, with moms, it's like you're worried about having a messy home, but that's a blessing at the same time. Why is your house a mess? Because you have children.
There's life
Right.
in your
Exactly. Yeah. And they even, I forgot, it was something biblical too, but I know, like, it was even something about the oxen and the cattle, something about being, I forgot where they stay. I don't know, a manger, wherever the oxen and the cattle stay at. It was the same issue, like, it's going to be messy if it's there. If nothing's there, that should be the worry. Or
easier said than done.
Exactly.
Right? What have you learned in your process as you started to meet with a therapist, as you started to notice these things? What have you learned in your process to help you?
I would say that I learned really kind of like that positive self-talk. There's something called cognitive distortions. And a lot of times you are overgeneralizing things. It's just all or nothing. And a lot of times that's not the case. So a lot of times it's really reframing. I find myself doing a lot of reframing oftentimes to, like when I feel like that stress level is starting to creep up. I just have to check myself and just really talk to myself. Like, okay, is this really something that needs to be done? Or like you might say something negative and it's like, okay, wait a minute. Like I said, it's really that all or nothing. And it's not the case. So for me, that's what I've worked with. I've worked on in therapy. And even like right now, I've gone back to therapy because, like I said, I'm not perfect. So sometimes that's another thing with me too. Now I've realized I'm a lot quicker to get the help I need instead of pushing it off like I used to do, being stubborn, trying to fix myself, so just really working through those things and just checking myself because like I said, some things don't always go away, but it gets better with time, and that's been my journey. Like I see the growth, and that's really just really doing things also that allow me to function well. So, as a mom, making sure I'm doing things such as, getting enough sleep. Those are things that my therapist will ask me, what are you doing? Are you getting enough sleep? What's your routine looking like, before you go to bed, when you're waking up, so you won't have anxiety or worry because you're rushing, you're waking up late, trying to get the kids together and then you're all rushing and then you're frantic and everything. So, really like putting, I guess, routines in place so that you can have peace. You're trying to pretty much set yourself up for success instead of putting yourself in situations that will cause stress because a lot of times I'm my own enemy. It's not everybody else. It's my fault. So yeah, really just.
Well, and it sounds like, right, there's a certain value in being able to embrace the messiness.
Yes.
Because like, right, there's so much beauty that comes out of a mess.
Yes.
But in order to do so, you have to give yourself permission to make a mess first. And I wonder, as a Black woman, as a Black mother who's being judged constantly, is the sense of needing to be perfect, does that prevent you from embracing the messiness?
I would say it can be a barrier.
Okay.
But a lot of times it's really thinking about, who I'm trying to who am I trying to impress? Am I comparing myself to somebody? And also just really remembering that a lot of times you're comparing yourself to somebody else, but you don't know their story either. So things look good on the outside. Yes. And then when you actually had that personal conversation with somebody, it's like, oh, okay. Like, yeah, everything isn't so glitz and glamour with them either, and it really kind of helps me as a mom. I would say that's another thing too. Having community really helps because a lot of times you feel like you're alone. Like you said, you're, and you'll sit with other people too, like you feel like, not that you're trying to be perfect, but when you think about it, it's like, oh, I guess I'm trying to, I don't know, live in my own form of perfectionism. I can check somebody else easily when I hear them talking about certain things. Yeah. Just like I need somebody to check me. So really that perfectionism is not, I guess, I don't know. I feel like it just, you have this picture in your head of how you want things to go for your family. Like, oh, I'm going to have the perfect, perfect day. I'll get up and, cook breakfast and all the kids will be happy and you get them off to school and it's never like really ever like that. So I really feel like it's just growth, motherhood in itself is a journey, just like life in general is a journey. It's really, I guess, stepping away from the fairy tale that we're used to seeing or thinking about until you're actually living in those different, parts of your life, different areas, marriage, motherhood. It's never anything like how you imagine. So once you're in
where does that fairy tale emanate from?
You said, where does it what?
Where does that come from? Like that fairy tale that you had about being the perfect mother? Like where?
I feel like a lot of times, like it really is just TV because when I think about it, I'm like, I don't know anybody who actually, it's really, I guess, like I said, sometimes it looks good until you really have those personal conversations. I really think that's it, especially in this day and age. You have social media, and you'll have people, or, if they only show you the parts that they want you to see, or for me, my mom, she was a single mother of two, and sometimes it could be comparison to that. I'm like, my mom was a single mother with two kids, and I did not see these same struggles. She had she was able to get the laundry out on the same day and fold it up right away, while my laundry pile is just piling up. And she'll even be in my ear like, I don't know why it's so hard for you, just fold it up as soon as it comes out the dryer. And I'm like, wow, for some reason, it's not that easy for me. She worked hard and I just didn't see her with those same issues. But number one, I have to remind myself, number one, I'm not her. Number two, I still have more kids than she does. She only had 2, even though she was a single mother. I'm married, but I still have 3 kids and a husband. So, my family overall is bigger. And just bottom line, I'm not her.
Yeah.
That's bottom line. I'm not her.
Yeah. Well, as you're telling that story, and, I have a background in sports, and so I see things through the prisms of sports all the time. So as you were sharing that story, it has me thinking, the discourse around current athletes and athletes from, my generation or before is that, these current athletes, they're complaining all the time. They have it easy, all these different things. And, when I'm able to take myself out of it and step back, sometimes I'm like, they're actually sharing what's really going on for them in a way that in previous generations that you would never allow yourself to be seen as having a weakness.
Right.
Or let people peel back that curtain on that weakness. And I know for sure, one of the reasons I started Unlocking the Club was because it was later in my journey with my mother and right before she passed that we started having real conversations about how things weren't perfect and how hard things were and how frustrated things were for her. And that she suppressed and held to herself because she had to project like everything is fine, because if everything is fine as the mom, then the family is going to be fine. And, I agree with you. I don't think that we have enough of these conversations on a regular basis to be real and authentic. We either have, I had a guest recently talk about like her family was compared to the Cosby family. So we have and nowadays that word, you sometimes don't want to say Cosby, but the Huxtables. And then you have this sense that we all love reality TV. So we love to see like things crash and burn, right? And for most of us, life is somewhere in between.
Yeah.
And we don't amplify that enough. And so how would you say that you've started having these conversations with friends, and how can we do a better job of just being honest and real and show those moments where we aren't perfect and be okay with it? And how can we receive that from our friends or family so that they can be seen and feel comfortable sharing those things with us?
I really feel like leaning into community with similar people is important, so when you lean into community, whether that's something online or in person, I feel like for me, it's allowed me to open up more. Sometimes it's kind of like, let's say I'm around another group of moms or people, it could be other couples, whatever it may be, where they're around other couples or their mothers, whatever the, group is.
Yeah.
It's like I'm kind of quiet. And then, you kind of hear somebody else sharing, and then you hear somebody else sharing. It's like, okay, this is it feels, like a safe place. So sometimes you don't always want to just blab out everything. You want to feel comfortable. But, you get yourself in these communities, and when you see the energy and like I said, it just you get a sense when you feel safe, and then that's when you can really open up and share with other people. You're not in a place where you hear somebody share something extremely personal that you may not feel comfortable, but you see everybody's reactions. It really, really allows you to open up more. And like, okay, these are my people. So if you're having you're going through a hard time, or when you feel like you're on the brink of going through a hard time, you have these people who you can go to. Like for me, even as a woman of faith, I have my Bible study group. You feel comfortable to them, can you pray for me about blah, blah, blah. You don't even have to go deep into whatever the issue is, but, like, can you pray for my marriage? Can you pray for this? I'm having this issue, so you feel comfortable going to these people versus you may not feel comfortable going to your own friends. You may not feel comfortable going to your own spouse sometimes, your mother, but getting around certain people with similar issues or problems or just something similar. Like I said, it could be a mother, and we don't have to have the same issues, but we all have kids, so we all going to face, similar things. Same things with couples. It could be even something like fitness. I always tell people, you may be on a health and wellness journey, and your spouse or your friends may not care. So you put yourself in an environment of other people who are working on that, and then you feel comfortable. Like, these are the people I can go to talk about my exercise or nutrition, whatever. And it's like this, I can have these conversations and not feel like I'm getting brushed off. You feel like you care about me. You're going to push me, make sure that, oh, you said you're going to work out 5 days a week. All right. Now you're hitting up my phone every day to make sure I made it to the gym or, whatever it is. You want to be around people who are encouraging, and not just kind of brushing you off, or you just feel like, then you have the tight lip, and then everything gets bottled up instead of being released some kind of way.
Yeah. Well, my sense is that in order to be able to do so is you have to actually know what it is that you need.
Yeah.
So that you're in the right space to be in.
Right.
And I imagine as a mother who's wearing a dozen different hats on any given day, being able to pause enough to acknowledge and recognize what it is that you need in that moment.
Yeah, I would
Is
say
a tough task.
it is. And I'm in a lot of different groups, even down for business, like, oh, you want to do speaking engagements? Let's get around other speakers. You want to be an entrepreneur? Let's get around other entrepreneurs. These are the people you can go to and have those conversations that make us all feel joyful versus I may go to another group who are not interested in these things and it's just not the same. You bring it up and then it's kind of like, I might as well kept that to myself, So you feel the difference when you're around, I guess, what you would call your people.
Yeah. Well, so she is nourished. So tell us a little bit about that. And then what your strategies for self-care would be.
Yes. So she is nourished is all about nourishing yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. I feel like as not just a woman, but a person in general, you have to make sure you're nourishing all those different areas because when one is out of whack, it definitely affects another. So, for example, when you go back to my story with my mental health, it was failing and I wasn't taking great care of my body either. I wasn't, my relationship with God was not as strong as I wanted to be. But when I fixed that, it allowed me to have that the mental energy actually to want to take better care of myself. And then I started nourishing my body and I got the physical energy. I started nourishing my relationship with God and that gave me the energy to get back to doing things that I love, such as coaching and, speaking to women. Same thing with the physical piece. If you're not taking good care of your body, you can have illnesses. And then what does that do? It causes more stress. So now that, our mental health is affected and it could even affect your spirituality. You're questioning, why is this even happening to me? And then for me as a woman of God, if you're not nourishing yourself spiritually, like I said, everything else can just fail, so we have to make sure that we're nourishing ourselves in all of those different areas. I feel like that's kind of how you quote unquote balance, or as I like to say now, just kind of find harmony in your life. And then as a woman, if she is nourished because I feel I don't want to say compelled, but called to help women. And then, with me specifically, moms, I got to help my moms out because I know that struggle. I know those different things we struggle with to even prioritize self-care, which we're talking about. That's what self-care is to me, nourishing yourself mentally, physically, and spiritually. And as moms, we're always taking care of everybody else, and it goes outside of our family. We have our own household. Sometimes we have our parents, aging parents to take care of, or you're worried about, like my mom is fine, but I'm always worried about her because like I said, she's that type of person who does not open up. So you got to dig to make sure everything is, really good. And then in all those other areas, in your business or career and ministry, we're always making sure that we are there for other people, but we can't truly be there or show up the best way possible if we're not happy, have peace and joy. I feel like a lot of times we're pouring here and there, but when we're full, full as in having peace and joy, we're able to give better. You're giving from a place of happiness instead of that depleted version. That person that is running around on fumes, just trying to hang on, hang on to their life. When you can see the difference when somebody is truly happy. You may already felt like, oh, they're always chipper and everything. But then when somebody's really happy, you can always see that extra glow on somebody, and sometimes you'll ask somebody, like, what's gotten into you? You just seem different. Sometimes you can't even explain it. You can tell when somebody is having, they're truly happy, or you can even feel it yourself. That energy. Like I said, you don't feel, everything just feels good. The mental and the physical energy is there, and that's what's important to me. And I know a lot of other moms and women in general need that. So that's why she is nourished is so important to me. And then I know you mentioned, how do you do that? it could be hard for us. So it does start with, you kind of mentioned it earlier, it starts with giving yourself permission, permission to say yes to yourself, not yes to anything else. We're already doing that. You have to give yourself permission to say yes to yourself and those things that you were called to do, those things that you know will bring you peace and joy if you start prioritizing those things. So say yes to yourself. That means you will have to start saying no to some things or people that no longer serve you and your purpose in life. Saying no might mean saying no to your own toxic behaviors or bad behaviors that's holding you back, which I've had to do. It may mean saying no to other people, setting up some boundaries, or maybe delegating. That's another thing as a mom, or, even if you're a person working with somebody else in business or ministry, you got to start delegating some tasks. You don't have to do it all on your own. Somebody else can do it, or you may teach them how to do those things, And then I would say start small, because that's a big issue with self-care, taking care of yourself. A lot of times we feel like, you mentioned the perfectionism. We feel like we have to do everything right away, right now. And a lot of times, if you're already struggling, start small. So for example, if you think about, maybe you want to start eating healthier. If you're not eating healthy at all, maybe start with one healthy meal a day, or eating healthy 3 days out the week instead of 7. Exercise, start with 5 or 10 minutes and then add on, or 3 days a week. Don't be afraid to start small, because small changes, they lead to big results, versus you're not doing anything at all, you're not going to get anything. Or when you try to go in, when you try to do a task like that you haven't done in a while, or it's new, you try to do it all right away, like go big. They say go big or go hard. Go hard, or whatever they say. And you quickly fail because it was too hard. It was too much at one time. And when you fail, a lot of times you don't, you may stop and not get back on track. So just start small, get used to it, and then add on. And then I already mentioned it before, lean into community, get some support and accountability that's going to keep you on track. That support and accountability could be seeing a therapist. It could be seeing a fitness coach or a personal trainer. It may be seeing somebody like me, a life coach, a self-care strategist, to help you figure out how to do those things and then keep you on track. If you fall off, we're right there to get you back on track, because we're not perfect. We may fall off track, but we can't stay off track. So you got to have that. Those people can help you with whatever goal it is that you're working on, a business coach, career coach, whatever it is, lean into those people.
We're here on Unlocking the Club, listening to Dr. LaToya Wiggins just break it down of how we can be in self-care. And, there's something that you said earlier that resonated with me. It was harmony.
Mm-hmm.
And it had me thinking, like, so often, I'm actually going to start to use that phrase. We always get asked, where do you find balance?
Mm-hmm.
And for me, even the visual representation of balance is that there's a choice between a couple of different things.
Yeah.
Right. The more of this means the less of that.
Mm-hmm.
And harmony actually, for me, is more representative, and it allows like that everything is working in conjunction with each other and strengthening each other, no matter what your choices are. Right. That it isn't a zero-sum game with a finite amount of time, energy, or focus, but that there is this harmonious connectivity that you can find in whatever it is. If it is your work life, it is your spiritual life, it is with family or friends, your social life, that making sure that it's in harmony, and each season may require a different melody.
Right. There you go.
No, well, fantastic. Well, we're here on Unlocking the Club with Dr. LaToya Wiggins. Dr. Wiggins, as you shared your story, you talked about postpartum depression with your third child.
Mm-hmm.
How are you doing with that? And what did you learn about yourself through that process and that discovery?
So as far as dealing with that, or how I'm doing with that, I feel so much better.
Sure.
So I started that journey. Oh my gosh, time is flying so fast. So it's 2023. I started in September, like September, October of 2021. And I stopped therapy initially in March 2022. So I went for several months, and that really helped me. I felt like, remember I said, I felt like I was stuck in a dark place with like no way to get out. I no longer feel like I'm in a dark place. So even, for example, now, more recently, I went back to therapy, but I don't feel like I'm in a dark place. So that's the difference. I'm seeking help when I feel like I need a little extra help, but I don't feel lost or stuck, like I'm drowning, so that's the big, huge difference. And I feel like that was the main thing. I know how to take care of myself now, and I do take care of myself, when I feel like I am kind of falling off, or, just at times, like you said, different season of our lives, it can change, So for example, after my son turned 1 last year, that's when I decided to get back into working on my public speaking career and my self-care coaching. Again, that's adding on something else, So at times just building that up, you can get overwhelmed. So between that and your children are forever growing, so you have to change with them. We're socializing more, I have a lot more on my plate now. So that's why I decided to go back into therapy to just help me, manage all of that as I'm taking on all these extra tasks, and I did want to mention we mentioned things, especially like with Black people. And even you were talking about in the history, people didn't always open up. That's new. So a lot of times people would think, going to therapy, that means I'm crazy. And it's not, like me seeing a therapist, I had to kind of think about that for myself. If I'm going to therapy, I must be crazy. It's just like going to the doctor in general. You have a cold, what do? It's just maintenance. Sometimes you want to make sure you're taking care of yourself and not wait, to the last minute where it's like, all right, now I'm going to the emergency room because I waited too long to take care of this bad cough or something. It's just taking care of yourself. And, I know some people, they say I go to therapy all the time, even if it's just once a month, because it's maintenance. Let's check in,
So I think that's a really important point, because there is this misconception, right, that it's bad, or that, right, like all those stories that decades ago we used to tell each other, and we need to normalize therapy.
Yeah.
I use the analogy, years ago, I had a massage, and the massage therapist was just saying, like, when's the last time you had a massage? I'm like, usually I'm on vacation or it's a special occasion, right? Or when I'm like, I desperately need, right, to relax my shoulders. And he was like, you know what, like there is this association with, it's a luxury item.
Yeah.
To have a massage. And he's like, it's actually for your body to perform at its optimal levels.
Right.
You should do this on a more frequent basis. The same thing as stretching and those little things. And I hope that we can have this conversation amongst friends and family more frequently, so we normalize therapy.
Yeah.
Whether it's a formal therapy relationship that you have with a therapist, or a friend or family member who's a great listener, that you can be honest and candid with, so that you don't have to wait until, right, it is so desperate of a situation. And I think that there's an equivalency to, I know in my lived experience and journey as a Black woman as well, of that hesitation to ask for help, just in general, because I didn't want people to think that I wasn't capable of handling it myself. I wasn't capable of figuring something out. And then it got to the point where you had no other alternative, and it was a dire situation. I think that that's the same for therapy. Is how do we normalize this? Again, if it's just with your friends and family, and being able to honestly share what's going on with you, good, bad, and indifferent, so that it doesn't get to the point where you can't handle it.
Right.
And so I appreciate you normalizing this conversation, and you doing the work through your coaching, through your speaking platforms, and through She Is Nourished. It is going to help us unlock that club and allow us to not be afraid of having postpartum depression or anxiety, but to understand that we all, like, right, are going through something at some time, and how can we take care of ourselves in the process and no longer do more harm. So Dr. Wiggins, thank you for sharing that. And I would love to get to know you a little bit more here right after the break on the Back Nine. We'll be right back. Are you feeling stuck in your career or your business? Are you struggling to identify your unique talents and strengths? Well, I have some exciting news for you. I'm Angela Taylor, host of the Unlocking the Club podcast, with a really special opportunity for you to find more joy and more productivity in your professional and or personal life. As a certified coach, I'm now certified in Patrick Lencioni's 6 Types of Working Genius. So my Unlocking Your Working Genius coaching package will help you uncover your working genius and unleash your full potential. In this special coaching engagement, we use a proven methodology to help you identify your natural talents and your areas of strength. And then we guide you in creating an action plan to leverage those strengths for greater success in your life, career, and or business. So whether you're a business owner, an executive, or simply looking to advance your career, we can help you reach your full potential. Don't let your talents go untapped. Contact us today to schedule your Working Genius assessment and schedule your coaching sessions. Visit us at unlockingtheclub.com/coaching. Join us today and start unlocking your working genius for a brighter future. Welcome back to Unlocking the Club. I'm your host, Angela Taylor, and I am here with Dr. LaToya Wiggins. We're talking about how to unlock self-care, and so that you can find that peace and joy that we speak of in harmony. I'm going to start using that a little bit more, being in harmony with ourselves. So we're here on the back nine, and Dr. Wiggins would love to know, for you, besides your own home, what's a place where you feel like you can be yourself?
Definitely at my mother's house.
Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, I mean, it's home. And she actually still has the same home I grew up in. So that's always, that's still my house. I still have the key to that house. But yeah, definitely my mom. And we have a close relationship. So I talk to my mom almost every day. If too many days go by, I'm hitting her up like, what's going on, lady? What are you doing? So that's always, that's always my safe place, period.
Yeah. Well, as you have your safe place, there's also probably those spaces that, right, we get a little bit nervous about. So what is a situation that you walk into with trepidation?
Trying to think. So then this taps into the introvert side of me.
Yes, I get you.
I would say probably, I don't necessarily want to say all, but it might be true. I feel like just walking into these spaces, period, just like if I'm going into a place and I just don't know anybody there, or it's a lot of people, I'm always, I guess, like internally uncomfortable. But so let's go back to the public speaking piece, right?
Yeah.
This is me stepping out of my comfort zone. Like even when you're talking about with therapy, like these are the things that help me manage, like public speaking. I'm more of a person, I like to stay behind the scenes. But the things I actually like to do, like teaching people how to be healthy, I always have to be front and center. I have to do that as a physical therapist. Now as a public speaker, I have my own podcast now. I'm coaching and I have to be around other people. So it's not like I enjoy being around other people, but I guess it's always, I don't know, the fear of the unknown, like I guess what we're talking about, trying to find my people, but I'm not that person who's just going to sit in the corner, like I used to do a few years ago. I'm just going to sit here. Hopefully somebody says hi and open up the conversation. That always still makes me feel more comfortable, of course. But now I'm that person who's going to go up to you, and start the conversation, or I'm looking at the other person that kind of reminds me of myself. Like, let me go say hi to her. She looks like she could use somebody to talk to you.
Yes. Well, how often are you walking into a room where a lot of people have that same thought? Like, right, this is the unknown, like, right? And so reframing it sometimes allows you to lean in,
Yeah.
in a really practical way.
Yeah.
No, that's as you've learned so much about yourself over the last few years, what's something that you now know about yourself that you refuse to hide?
That I refuse to hide? I don't know. I think it probably still goes back to what we were just talking about. I've always been kind of like a quiet person unless I really know you. And now I feel like I'm unlocking that. Yeah, I'm unlocking that person who I'm meant to be. I'm called to speak and teach. So again, I have to be front and center. Even being on video, initially when I thought about doing a podcast, I'm like, okay, I don't have to be on video, I can hide. And then as soon as I started my own podcast, no, I'm going to be right on camera,
Mm.
so it's really helping me to, like I said, I'm stepping out of my comfort zone. I am just doing things that it's like it feels uncomfortable, but in a good way, if that makes sense, and the more you do it though, that's the thing, the more you do it, the less uncomfortable you feel about doing it, so,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess it's really just, if you want something, you go after it, and don't be afraid, and even if you are afraid, like, some people say do it afraid, or do it scared. With me, I always say if you are a woman of faith, you're not even really doing it afraid. You're doing it with, trusting God, so just go after what you want, keep doing it. If there's no such thing as failure. So if you feel like you failed at something, it's a lesson learned. You go back, regroup, and you get back out there and do what you need to do. So that's really been me. I've just been straight stepping out of my comfort zone. And that was not what I intended to do. I just was going to stay behind the scene. I don't want to be nobody's boss. I just want to go to work, clock in, clock out, and just being an entrepreneur in itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had no plans on being an entrepreneur. And now
Mm.
I'm doing everything that
Now you are.
I did not want to do. And it feels good now.
Yeah. Well, and I want to kind of dig into that a little bit too, because so now that you are front and center
Mhm.
in finding your voice, do you know what it was that you were trying to hide? And do you know why you were trying to hide?
I think for me, it was really just the fear of failure, and it goes back to the perfectionism piece. I don't want to fail. I don't want to fail. And like I just said, I had to remind myself of what I just said. There is no such thing as failure. And I guess reflecting on that a lot of times, which I've done in coaching programs, even with therapy. If you look back, if you take a piece of paper and just write down all of your accomplishments, it's like you're not a failure. And in some of those things, you kind of think back on the times when you felt like you failed. What came out of that?
Yeah.
So, like, as a physical therapist, did I fail some stuff in PT school? Yes. But here I am. I'm a therapist. So, that one quote unquote failure did not hold me back. You learn from those situations, you get a game plan, and you get back in the game. You're talking about
Yeah,
sports.
that's true. I was listening to, or I was reading an article again about sports, and there's a women's basketball player who was talking about they've had a lot of success this year and they lost a game. They could have easily won that game.
Mhm.
But she said, and this is a young kid, probably 20 years old. And she said, you know what? If we had won that game, we would have easily kicked down the road the things that we needed to work on.
Mm.
While we didn't want to lose, the best thing that happened was that we were forced to confront
Yeah.
those things that we needed to work on. And when we are trying to be, one of our previous guests on the show, Shantara Hardy, said, perfection is expensive, right?
It
It
is.
really is expensive because we work ourselves up, we don't
Mhm.
give ourselves a break, and we miss out on opportunities to learn
Yeah.
in that moment. And so that is, thanks for sharing that. I think that is really important for us to understand as well, when we're trying to hide
Mhm.
our, you know, infallibilities.
Yeah.
Like we all make mistakes. And so when we try to hide some of those things, we don't learn in the process and others can't learn from us.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
One of the things that, for me, I've learned along the way in this journey is my superpower.
Yeah.
And before, again, as an introvert, I look at other folks that are doing things so effortlessly.
Mhm.
And I was like, oh, wow, I can never do that. Like, I don't have anything that's special for me. And then I started to recognize, wait a minute, there's some of those things that I do really well that others don't.
Right.
What is your superpower?
My superpower. I always say I'm a lover of health and wellness, and I feel like that alone is my superpower.
Mm.
So for example, I'm a physical therapist. And, stepping out of my comfort zone was going into entrepreneurship outside of having that doctorate degree. But everything always brings me back to health and wellness. Like that's my baby. You get me talking about health and wellness. Oh, we can talk all day long, so even stepping out of being a physical therapist, and sometimes I'm questioning like, girl, are you crazy? I've had other people ask me that, like, girl, you got your doctorate degree, blah, 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 and this is my superpower though. I feel like it's part of my calling. I'm still doing what I feel like God is leading me to do. I'm still doing health and wellness. Everything that I learned from being a physical therapist, being in the health and wellness field, allows me to talk about health and wellness to, other women, to other moms, from experience as a health and a healthcare professional, as well as my experience, in my own personal life. So I would say that is my superpower.
Yeah, definitely is your superpower. When you think about the world that we are living in and the spaces that you in particular are navigating, what's a story that needs to be told?
A story that needs to be told. I would say just going back to whether you're a mother or a woman, you could be taking care of, you could be a caretaker to anybody or whatever your baby is, that could be your own business. We really, you kind of already mentioned it, just really normalizing the mental health journey. I feel like it's getting better. Yeah, I will say that it's getting better, but it still needs some work. And definitely, especially as Black women, I feel like we're still kind of holding on to those limiting beliefs. You get around other women and you don't always want to open up because, Black women, we're angry or it's gossiping and everything. Just really, like I said, if you just have to find your tribe of people, find a safe place and really normalize talking about mental health therapy, because I feel like when you get around other people, and people that's uplifting, not just like, oh, we're going to be all sitting around in a circle and just having our pity party together. You have to be around that, that women empowerment, this is what's going on, but now what's next?
What's next?
Right. Like we have to have a game plan, not just going to be around just, talking about our problems and that's it. No, what's the problem? And now what's the solution? What's a game plan? So really normalizing that. That's what I would say. Yeah. The mental health therapy and, like it's a lot of women empowerment. But even with that, I've been blessed to be around good women empowerment groups. I've heard some people talk down on some women empowerment because I guess maybe they're in the environments where it gets kind of gossipy or shaming or whatever. So like I said, find your tribe. That's even like if you think about church. Every church is not going to be for you. You got to find what's right for you. Down to a job, find what's right for you and stick there. Don't just don't exclude all environments, all women groups, or whatever it is, just because of one bad experience. Find your tribe. Like I said, if you got to sit kind of quietly and read the room first, do that. But, be open. Have an open heart toward those things.
Yeah. When you have an open heart and you'll find that tribe that brings out the best in you.
Yeah.
Like, and that's what you want to seek is like, who's going to challenge you to be better?
Mm-hmm.
And to find those superpowers that you hold. And so, LaToya, like when you're at your best, however you would define being at your best, what's true for you?
True for me, I just feel like I'm being the person that God wants me to be. And that makes me feel, I always say, like my signature talk is transition from worn out to winning. That's what winning is for me. Being the person, if I feel like I'm pleasing him, then I'm doing right.
You're winning.
I'm winning. Right. And it, like I said, that gives me that peace and joy that I was talking about. You feel peace, you feel joy, you feel like we were talking about earlier burdens. The weight is lifted.
Yeah. Well, you were bringing a lot of peace and joy to those who have the opportunity to be in your space. What are some of the projects that you're working on, and where can we be in that space of peace and joy?
Yeah. So I do have my own podcast that I started at the beginning of the year. She is a nurse mom. Everything is she is a nurse mom, so very easy to find me. But she She's a Nurse Mom podcast on all major podcast platforms, including YouTube. So you can find me there. We're talking about all things motherhood, self-care, and faith for moms. What else am I working on? I feel like I'm doing a lot of different speaking engagements. So with the different speaking engagements, I would say make sure you are following me on social media at She's a Nurse Mom, so you can keep up with all the different things I have going on. Soon, I'm going to be doing some monthly, what I call monthly self-care mommy chats. So if you are a mom, you can tune into those monthly mommy chats, and we're going to be talking about self-care for different kind of moms. So we're going to be breaking down to single moms, married moms, moms with children with special needs, talk about fitness, just talk about different health and wellness topics each month. So those are the main things I have that's coming up right now.
Great. So we will have all that information in Unlocking the Club show notes for this episode. Definitely encourage you to follow Dr. Wiggins on sheisanourishmom.com on her website, as well as on Instagram at She's a Nurse Mom. And we will keep you up to date on anything that we hear coming down the pipeline from Dr. LaToya Wiggins. LaToya, thank you so much for joining us today on Unlocking the Club.
Yes, thank you for having me.
Wow, another fantastic conversation here on Unlocking the Club. I'm your host, Angela Taylor. Thank you once again for joining us. So many nuggets were dropped in that conversation with Dr. LaToya Wiggins. And the thing that resonated with me really was about finding a way for you to be in harmony with yourself and being in self-care so that you can create that space of peace and joy and harmony. So for all of our folks here at Unlocking the Club, thank you for joining us. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media platforms and on YouTube to get the latest and the greatest about the things that we're doing and upcoming guests that we'll have on our show. Until the next episode, please be well.
Thanks for listening to Unlocking the Club. If this conversation resonated with you, subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or your favorite streaming platform so that you can experience every episode. And follow us on social media, where you'll hear about future guests, access special features, and connect with this amazing community. Head on over there and let us know how you are unlocking the club. Until next time, peace.